Hey everybody, I'm working on a part of my next video, which I hope to have out pretty soon. I did not realize that the one that I put out just to three members of the family, Peggy, Judy, and Joe, would have over, today I think it's over 50 views. I imagine 4 or 5, and some comments directly back from them. I did get one from Peggy, but not from anyone else. I just wanted to mention that. But I'm working on part 2, and I'm also working on a concept and an understanding that we need to have, which was taken from history and hidden from us. And it's a key, if you will, to understanding the true meaning of a lot of things in the gospel of Jesus Christ, especially in the latter days. Because things are wrapping up, they're coming to an end, things are moving forward really quickly. I'm hoping, like probably most of you, that things aren't going to turn for the worse, and more plagues and more evil, destruction in the world that we live in. I'm praying that we have more time to bring souls into Christ. I'm hoping that we'll have more time to repent of our sins, hence Repentance Productions. And I'm working, trying to get some of those videos out. And I'm hoping that this next one will be beneficial to my family. Perhaps I will be saying, instead of family, this is your Uncle Steve or cousin or whatnot, Grandpa. Hopefully this will help you in your journey, because I don't know how much time we have. Hopefully we have plenty. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. I gotta get back to work.
So hey family, it's me, Steve, and I thought I would do part 2 of the original video that I did talking about Mom and Dad and the difference that they made in my life in my youth. And I really believe that they would do anything for any one of us. And I don't know your stories about them. Maybe you could either write them down or do a short vlog and send them to me, and we'll put them up here. This is another private video, and I just wanted to share with you the rest of the story. You know, like Paul Harvey used to say, hey, now the rest of the story. And it would probably pick up with me getting out of the military and deciding that I was going to try to live in Houston, Texas. Now, Kathy, my wife at the time, brother-in-law, Don Richardson, was a manager of a vending company that did bubblegum machines, kiddie rides, video games all over southern Texas. And so I'd ride around and repair some of them, clean them, and fill those machines up with toys and whatnot. And I was doing really well. I was making a surprisingly excellent living at the time. And I remember I got a call from Dad, and he, at my son's house, he, sorry about the wobble of the camera there. He explained to me that he was going through a difficult time financially, and I told him that I could help him. And so I don't remember the amount, I could care less, but I sent him what he needed, and when he got it, he was very gracious and very pleased for it, gave me much thanks, and wanted to know if there was anything that I could do for him. And I just had a feeling, come in me that said, let your father do something for you, and it'll make him feel better. So I said, Dad, listen, the wheels started turning, and I was very inactive from the church at the time, really. But I thought, it'd probably be great if, for him to think that I'm trying, which I was both trying and not trying, most of the time not trying, to study the gospel of Christ and learn it and become more knowledgeable about it. And I remember that I asked him if he could send some videotapes of the latest conference, and that's what I said. Hey, just go down and get me they used to have them on cassettes in these little binder-like type things full of each session. I said, go buy me a couple of those and send them to me. And I remember the price, even as strange as that is, like $22. I don't know why I remember that, but they were $22.50 each, and my dad sent me a couple of them. And I had no intentions of listening to them really, maybe a little. And I went to pick them up. In those days, there was no Amazon or anything like that. You had to go to the post office if they weren't shipped directly to you. And I lived way up kind of a rural area in Crosby, Texas, on a lake. And so I got on my trips in my box van, and I'm always looking over to the left. That's how you know when somebody's accessing their memory, for you sales guys. Anyway, I went to the post office and I picked them up because I got a little notice saying they had a package, and that's what they were, and I opened up and saw that's what they were. I think I read a little note or something from Dad, and then I just set them on the seat inside the van that I was riding in, and I went on my trip. And one of the things about Texas, and particularly those days, you know, there was big distances between like Columbus, Texas, and San Antonio, or from San Antonio to Uvalde, which was part of my route. Was really, really a long drive. And I was driving along and I ran out of signal. I was listening to country or rock or whatever. And as I was cruising down the road, I ran out of station. I got out of signal range, so now it's dead quiet. And that's okay for a little while. But then I looked over and I'm like, these tapes are here. Okay, so I pulled out one and stuck it in and listened to it for a while, and to me it was the same old stuff that I'd heard before, you know, repent, be good, love your neighbor as yourself, all the things that are good and they're positive. There's no negativity there at all. It's just, it got those feelings like, oh boy, you know, am I really going to be able to sit and listen to all these? And those days didn't even have the Mormon Tabernacle Choir on them. In between sessions, it was just talk. So I listened for a little while, got a little frustrated with it because I thought it was the same old message, and I ejected the tape and actually chucked it in the back. I figured I'll find it later. Drove for a while and it was silent again. I thought, you know what, try another one. So I opened up the other conference, pulled out randomly one of the tapes, plugged it in. It was pretty much the same thing, except for I think one of the guys said something remarkable that got my attention. It said, God is not so much concerned with what you have done as he is with what you will do. And when I thought of all my mistakes and challenges and my addiction and everything, which those days I didn't even call it an addiction, but I started listening to him. Maybe there's a point there. Maybe he's more concerned with what I'm going to do than what I have done. So I listened to it and it was okay. But the very next talk that I listened to was talk by a general authority, one of the 12 actually, and his whole Richard Scott, I think it's Richard G. Scott, he's since passed away, but the whole gist of his talk was come back. And he said in the talk that I would, if I came back, if I had the courage to come back, and I felt like he was talking to me. I don't know if you've ever done that, even if you went to a sermon by a good pastor, sometimes you feel like they're talking right to you. But this guy was talking right to me, and he said, if you come back, you will find good people, good brethren standing beside you and helping you back through it. And so that really sunk deep into me. And this feeling that came over me where I just knew this guy was sincere. I knew that if I met him, his whole demeanor, his whole feeling or whatever would come across as that he really, really cared about me. And so I told myself I'd give it a shot, and I don't know if I ever listened to any more of the talks, but that just kind of stuck in my heart. And when I got back to the Texas area, I decided to go try to find my ward. And I was not active. My wife Kathy was not active at the time at all. But I remember on a Saturday, in those days, again, we didn't have Google Maps. You know, you looked in the yellow pages and then you try to find the address and try to find it on a map and you cruise around. And I just cruised around trying to find this ward house, and I found it. And then I know where it is. I found out that what time the meeting was by asking somebody there in the parking lot. Okay, I'm all set. And it took everything, I have to tell you, it took everything that I had to get to that meeting the next day. I really didn't want to go. But I remember that he said that I would find people willing to stand next to me if I would just go. And so I drove to the chapel, got all dressed, and I told myself, I'm going to wait till the sacrament meeting starts. I believe that even back in those days, the sacrament meeting was usually first. And then I'm just going to go stand in the back and just see how I feel. And if I feel awkward, I don't feel comfortable, whatever, I'm bolting. I'm getting out of there, just in the back. Nobody even noticed me come in. And it was really strange because I went in and the speaker was speaking, and I went back in the back in the chapel where they open up the slide doors, and there's a few chairs there, and I just stood there in the back. And I kid you not, I looked up just as I started to stand there, and a gentleman looked over his shoulder and saw me. And he walked back and he stood beside me. I said, that's kind of strange. And then another gentleman that I noticed on the other side of the chapel looked over his shoulder and saw me too. And immediately, well, what's going on here, He got up and he come back. This is LDS stuff. This, to me, usually you try to greet or talk to somebody after a sacrament meeting, in the foyer or whatever. This guy came and stood beside me. And one guy stood on one side of me and smiled and shook my hand. The other guy stood on the other side of me and shook my hand. One was the elders quorum president, and the other was the high priest group leader. Both become tender friends. Both helped me with the transition of coming back into the church. From that time forward, I had a lot of help. Now, what I have found when I started going, because, anytime you do anything like this, you kind of start to go up, but then you have a slip. And every one of us, I don't care who you are, who you think you are, or whatever, you may try something and then you kind of have a setback. And I did. And I started telling myself that I was really trying to help people. I actually got a badge that I wore in church that said, come back. And I was trying to help people come back. And I remember that I had a lot of disappointing feelings, because I felt like when all was said and done, when more was said than done, we're great talkers in all faiths, all Christian, all whatever, everybody, there's some talkers. I have pastor friends, the best talkers when it gets right down to it. They cuss like sailors and drink and, all kinds of things. Say, oh, Jesus still loves me. And LDS guys too. The old saying that we used to have when I played golf a lot, with guys would pull out the beer and say, if any of you members are here, LDS people here, please don't drink all my beer. Which, I don't know how true it was, because I usually didn't hang with those guys, but I digress. Anyway, it's in all groups or whatever, people sometimes don't stay true. And I started to see a little bit of that, not too much, but a little bit. And I decided, I think I'm better off being inactive. The company that I was with was not totally honest. And that bothered me, and I had my addiction, which I've had for ever since I was a kid. And the two of those things, made me feel like I was out of place again. I forgot the message that God isn't as much concerned with what you have done as with what you will do. And I had come up with a plan. Now, my wife at the time... Anyway, my plan was basically to slip back into inactivity. And at the time, we had a home out on the lake, as I mentioned earlier, and we decided that we needed a bigger place. Family was growing. We had planned to have at least another child. We had my son, Justin, at the time, and we decided we wanted to have another child, and so we needed probably a bigger place. And my brother-in-law, Don, was also a realtor, and so he told us about a house on about 4 acres, 3.5, 4 acres, out in Dayton, Texas. And we went out there and looked at it. We liked it. And he said, you probably should put a bid on it. And it was a VA home, a VA loan. And so we put in a bid for it, and we didn't hear anything back. And then somewhere along the line, on our quest or our looking around, Don called us back and said, you may want to go out and look at that house. I can't tell you if you won the bid, but you may want to go out and look at that house. So keep in mind, my plan was to go back into inactivity. Now, when I was at this first ward that I first went into, I actually ran into President Stewart, who was the stake president, and he shook my hand after a couple of times I was asked to speak. And kind of knew about me, I guess is the best way to put it. He's a very nice man. But anyway, I determined that I was going to move out of this ward, and we found a house, and we got the house, and it was in Dayton. I'll never forget the day we went out there, because again, my plan is to be an inactive member again. And so we went out there and looked at the house, and we went up and down the stairs, looked at all the rooms. It was great, and like we remembered, and we were super excited about moving into it. And Kathy came to me and she said she was looking in the study downstairs and on top of the shelf, and she found a cassette, and it was the Book of Mormon on tape. That was kind of strange. And so since she was super excited about being there, she walked over to the neighbors and met the neighbors, and they were LDS. Now, you guys got to keep in mind, I'm just moving this camera just a little bit. You got to keep in mind that this is Texas. This is unheard of. I mean, if you go to Utah and you move into a neighborhood, you can expect that people around you, some of them are going to be LDS. If you move into like Arizona down here where we are now, you can expect the same thing. This is rural Texas. This is out in the middle of nowhere. And that's going to be key. Something really cool. That's why I'm kind of dedicating this second part to Mom and Dad. You're going to be blown away when we get to the end of the story. And I'm sorry it's so long. It's a lot of stuff. But anyway, she went over and talked to the neighbors, found out that they were LDS, and that the other lady on the other side of us, on these 2.5 acre, 3 acre tracts, whatever they were, was also LDS. And in fact, the lady at the very end of the street that lived in a very old house, she was probably in her 80s at the time, was also LDS. And that was the family, and they had all this property that they had bought back in the day. Okay, so and it was kind of unusual that the whole street, Ford Avenue in Dayton, Texas, was LDS. But not only that, the last house, or the farmhouses on the very edge of the corner before you got to the main freeway or the main road going out of Dayton, Texas, the state patriarch lived in that house. And then across the street from him was what turned out to be Brother Baker, and he was like the first and second counselor in the ward forever and a day. That was Dayton, Texas. And I remember I'm planning on going inactive again. I moved right in the middle of it. Things that make you go hum. Well, I didn't ask for anybody to help me load or unload a truck, but the day that I backed up with a typical U-Haul trailer, and backed up to the front door to unload, the Elders Quorum presidency from the old ward showed up and introduced me to the new ward. Out in Liberty, Texas was the ward, so they were all there. I'm like, oh my goodness, I couldn't go inactive now if I wanted to, but I was determined. And so what I did was I just didn't go. I don't think Kathy would go without me. I don't remember her having that kind of determination or desire to go on her own. So I decided to go inactive. I was determined. I'm not going to go. Well, I got a phone call. And Dad told me years ago, he used to say, son, if you ever get a call from the state president or a bishop, you have to go. Because that's what you covenanted that you would do at baptism. That's what you said you would do. And he just challenged me to always accept not the call so much as if they ask to see me, go see him. It's usually going to be a good thing. And I was struggling with that. I got a call from this executive secretary for President Stewart, the guy that I'd met in the previous ward, and I was still in his stake. And so he said the state president, President Stewart, wants to meet with you. He wants to talk to you. And I was sure as I was driving him, I said, yeah, I'll come. I really wanted to be inactive, I have to tell you. So I'm driving, thinking about what I'm going to tell him, because I'd met him, I'd spoke. He come and spoke to me a couple times, said some very encouraging things to me in my life in the previous ward. And now I'm on my way to see him. And I'm sure he's going to chew this butt of mine. What are you doing? You speak so well, eloquently of the church, have a testimony and whatever. I thought that's what I was prepped for. So I wanted to see President Stewart, and I was all ready. And he brought me in the room, and we said a little prayer, as usually they do. And then he said, how you doing, Brother Murphy? And I started going to how I I know I hadn't been to church and so on and so forth. And he just slipped a little bit closer on his desk, put his hand up, said, "Stop." Said, "Brother Murphy, I have members in my ward that are less active than you, and they sit on the front row every week. That's not why you're here. I'm here to call you to be the ward mission leader in Liberty, Texas, in that ward." And I just sat back and thought, what? And he said, I was meeting with a regional representative of the area, and he said, "Do you have a ward mission leader for the Liberty Ward?" To President Stewart. And President Stewart said, "No, I don't." Guys, I don't know why, but I got to sneeze. Sure enough, I sneezed. Remember, if you're ever trying to do the right thing, it will always be an uphill battle. But I digress. So President Stewart said that he talked to this regional representative, and the regional rep asked him if he had a ward mission leader for that area, and he said, "I haven't found one yet." And they were at a big regional meeting, and he slipped him a piece of paper. And he said, "Brother Murphy, your name was on that piece of paper." And he said, "This is to be your ward mission leader, my name." Now, there's a ton to this story, so please stick with us, or with me, because it is incredible. I just experienced it. I have found in my life, if you're willing to do what the Lord wants you to do, miracles will happen, things will happen that you're not expecting. He said, "I want you to accept this calling," and I told him that I would, and I drove home. I don't even know how I got home. This was a big deal to me. Now, I know there's a lot of people in the church that will tell you the ward mission leader is the one job that they dread, they hope they never get. For me, it was very sacred. It was a very special moment. I gotta turn the lights back on my computer here. It's a little better. A little more light. Anyway, so I drove home. I remember going home, and my wife at the time, Kathy, wanted to know what was going on. And my kids, I just walked right by her, went straight upstairs to my bedroom, and basically closed the door and fell on my knees. And I told God, "You know who I am. I'm an addict. I'm a jerk. What is going on here?" And I prayed for a little while, and then I just rolled up in the fetal position, and it was just too much for me. But I did become the ward mission leader, and this is what is really unique and special about this. At this point in time in my life, is the connection that I'm going to tell you about. So stick with me. It's coming up here in a little bit. On the next video, I had a tremendous experience as a ward mission leader. Worked with some fine young men. There's a whole bunch of backstory that I didn't know. If I'd known at the time, I'd probably been a whole lot more discouraged. I remember I didn't have a companion. I didn't have anybody else. I was just the guy, just the ward mission leader. And before I jump off this part and go on to the next, I want to give you this short little story. I started trying to get some momentum going. I remember one day, I said, "You're a missionary now," and I was called and set apart. I got in my car and I drove into the local town in Dayton and drove into Liberty, and I thought, I got to get out and walk around and be around people, otherwise I'm never going to meet anybody that I can teach. And so I think in my willingness to do that, the Lord started sending up just a ton of blessings. Just a ton of stuff came, which was mind-boggling. But I remember I was in the ward, and there was a little branch, a little ward at the time, not a branch, it was actually a ward. And the lady came up to me and she said, "Hey, I don't like what you're doing in our ward. We're a closed, closed, tight little group. And we like each other, and we have like little social things after dinner, because everybody, it's kind of like farm communities, they got to drive into Liberty. We have dinner after Sunday, potluck sometimes, and I don't like what you're doing with this ward. I don't like what you're doing. I don't like it." And I remember she was kind of like a prominent person in the ward. I noticed her on every event. Every activity she was there. She was like the lead, and so I went home, and I said, I went up in that bedroom again and got on my knees and said, "Lord, what is going on?" Well, I think I faced more opposition sometimes within the church, within the wards, than I did with ministers out on the street. I mean, maybe it was equal because I had some pretty intense meetings and talks with pastors, with different groups. Some really good men thinking that they were doing the right thing, but anyway, I don't want to digress into that right now. But I remember praying about this really strongly, and the very next Sunday, this lady came up to me. This is all in 1 week. She came up to me and she said, "We're so excited." I don't know why she felt like she had to come tell me, but she came right to me and said, "We're so excited. My husband got a job in Beaumont, Texas. It's a job we always wanted. Beaumont is like another 120 miles to the east towards Louisiana. We put our house on the market. We got an offer the second day that it was on. We're closing and we're going." And just like that, she moved out of the ward. Just like that, it seems like the Lord took whatever opposition that I had at that point in time and removed it. This family moved out of the ward. Within 2 weeks, they were gone. And I was stunned by that as I look back on it. As quite a miracle, if you will. Guys, I saw some incredible things as ward mission leader, and I'm going to share it with you. And it's going to go around like a circle and come right back to mom and dad. And I want you to keep watching this and show how that all comes together. And we'll put up another video and talk about that. I love you. I hope you're all doing well. The world's crazy right now. At the time that I'm making this video, there's war in the Middle East like crazy. We got an election coming up. Who knows what's going to happen. I hope you have plenty of food and water if you need it. And I love you, and keep watching these vlogs or these videos, and don't be afraid to put a comment down in there. I got big shoulders. I can handle it. I love you, and we'll see you on the next one. Okay?